Prince Harry has told London's High Court that coverage by the Daily Mail made his wife, Meghan's life, an absolute misery.
A heavy silence didn't just settle into the courtroom, it tightened around everyone like pressure, thick and suffocating, the kind that makes your chest feel heavy without warning. This wasn't the usual quiet of legal routine. This was something deeper, something unsettling, the exact moment when truth crashes straight into belief and refuses to stay hidden. 11 words. Just 11. That was all it took to set everything off. 11 carefully chosen words that didn't just speak, they hit hard, shaking a marriage, tearing apart a public image, and exposing something far more complicated underneath it all. The impact was immediate. Even experienced journalists, people who had covered intense stories for years, suddenly paused. Pens stopped moving, notes left unfinished as the weight of those words settled in. Those same words, calmly delivered, carried enough emotion to make him tear up when speaking about Diana. And that detail alone shifted the energy in the room. There was no shouting, no dramatic pause, no raised tone. Judge Margaret Thornbury simply read them out, her voice steady, controlled, almost detached. But inside that polished courtroom, surrounded by dark wood and formal structure, those 11 words cut through years of carefully built narratives like they had been waiting for this exact moment. And then there was Prince Harry, because he didn't just react, he broke under the weight of it. That moment changed everything. The room, the trial, the mood, it all shifted instantly. Watching someone's world come apart like that, right in front of you, without warning, it hits differently. This wasn't something rehearsed or controlled for cameras. This was real, unfiltered, impossible to ignore.
That their pattern of destroying evidence and concealing their unlawful behaviour continued into the litigation itself.
That February morning inside London's High Court turned into something nobody expected, and once it started, it didn't slow down. Before that, everything had been predictable. Papers moving, quiet conversations, the judge speaking evenly, reporters writing things down like it was just another case. It felt routine, like nothing surprising would happen. But the moment Judge Thornbury reached that one line, everything changed. You could feel it instantly, like the air shifted, like something serious had just entered the room. Every eye turned toward the witness box. Harry sat there, posture straight, shoulders firm, trying to stay composed. His jaw was set tight, showing control, showing focus. But then it slipped. It started small, a slight twitch in his jaw, almost unnoticeable at first. Then his hands tightened, fingers curling into fists, gripping his knees hard enough to turn his knuckles pale. That control he had, it was starting to break. His expression changed completely. The same face people had seen in public, calm and composed, now showed something deeper, something real. This wasn't simple frustration or discomfort. This was pain, raw, heavy, and impossible to hide, the kind that shows up whether you want it to or not. And what followed? That moment stayed with everyone in that room. Slowly, like he was trying to make himself smaller, Harry lowered his head. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just naturally, like someone trying to process too much at once. Then came the moment that made everything stop. He covered his face with both hands, and in that deep silence...
You're 12 years old, I just refused to accept that she was gone.
A sound broke through, a sob. Not controlled, not quiet, not prepared. It was real, strained, and impossible to ignore. The kind of sound that makes people freeze because they know it's genuine. Even the sketch artist stopped drawing, because this wasn't something staged. This wasn't a public reaction being managed. This was real emotion breaking through. It was the sound of someone realizing that what they feared might be true, could be even more complicated than they expected. And that's where everything deepened, because this wasn't just one layer of tension. There was more underneath, those messages being read out loud. They were never meant to be public. They were private conversations, personal exchanges between Meghan and someone she trusted from her past in California, someone she had known for years, someone she believed she could speak openly with. But behind the scenes, that same person had quietly worked with the defense, sharing those messages. And what came out wasn't just simple conversation, it wasn't harmless. It showed structure, intention, something more thought out than expected. Judge Thornbury had already warned the courtroom earlier. The messages carried serious implications. Not inappropriate content, but something more layered, something that raised questions about patterns and decision-making. Because what started forming didn't fully match the image people had been shown. It didn't clearly reflect someone only reacting to pressure or difficult situations. Instead, it suggested planning, awareness, strategy, someone thinking ahead and shaping how things would appear, a careful approach to public image unfolding over time, and right at the centre of it all was Harry's connection to Diana.
Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, couldn't be present today. However, he's prepared a statement following Mirror Group's acceptance.
Those same emotional moments, the ones that made him tear up when speaking about Diana, suddenly carried a different weight in that setting, and once that idea settled in, it stayed there, because the suggestion, even if subtle, was enough to make people think. That deeply personal grief, something that shaped his life from a young age, might have been influenced in ways people hadn't considered before. Think about that for a second. Imagine realizing that the emotions you believed were entirely your own, the memories, the pain, the vulnerability, might have been shaped even slightly by something outside of you, that the moments people saw publicly might not fully reflect what was happening privately. By that point, the judge continued reading, but the room wasn't focused on the words anymore. Every eye stayed on Harry. His shoulders moved slowly, rising and falling as he tried to steady himself. Every small movement felt louder than anything else happening. Then his attorney stood, voice firm but urgent. "Your Honour, I request a recess. My client is experiencing severe emotional distress." The tension in that moment was clear, but Judge Thornbury remained steady, following procedure. The request was denied. The hearing would continue. Still, something had shifted. Even her tone sounded different, slightly thinner, less steady than before. Outside the courtroom, everything was already moving fast. Phones buzzing, messages being sent, reporters typing quickly, sharing updates in real time. Headlines started forming almost instantly. Prince Harry collapses in court. The message that changed everything. Text challenges Sussex defence. The situation had clearly escalated beyond a typical legal case. What started as a slow-moving privacy case had turned into something much bigger.
Breaking news to bring you now from the High Court. The Duke of Sussex has settled.
Then came the longest stretch, 4 full hours. 4 hours where Harry didn't speak at all. Not a single word. He remained in the witness box, face flushed, eyes swollen, hands slightly shaking as message after message was read aloud. Each one added more weight. Some messages were subtle, easy to overlook on their own. Others were more direct, harder to ignore. But together, they built a picture that people in the room couldn't easily dismiss. One message described a private family dinner as a gold mine of reactive content. Another talked about plans to bake empathy into Harry's next appearance. And then came the line that stayed with everyone. "He wears grief like silk. We just need the right lighting." That line stood out. Grief compared to silk. Something soft, something visible, something adjusted for presentation. When you really think about it, it changes how you see something deeply personal, turning it into something that can be shaped or displayed. The entire courtroom stayed still. Even experienced reporters looked surprised, because at that point, this wasn't just about public image anymore. It had moved into something deeper. This was about perception, and how easily it can shift. Then the case moved further into what the defense described as the narrative construction and manipulation phase, and the intensity didn't drop. The focus turned to Harry's therapy disclosures, especially the ones shared during that Oprah interview. The moment where he spoke openly about pressure, about feeling stuck, about everything building up around him. But now, those same moments were being examined closely, The messages broke them down carefully, like someone reviewing how something was presented, line by line, tone by tone, reaction by reaction, just like a director analysing a performance. And hearing it framed like that, it naturally makes you pause and question how much of what people see is exactly how it really happened. That next moment didn't come in loud or dramatic. It slipped in smooth, controlled, almost casual, but it hit just as hard. The tone shifted from shock to something colder, more calculated, like the room was no longer reacting. It was absorbing. Then the line came through, steady and precise. Good. That line about trapped in the system landed well, but next time, pause longer. Before I couldn't even call my grandmother. It needs space to breathe. And just like that, everything started to feel different. You could sense it immediately. Those weren't just reflections. Those were notes, adjustments, instructions. There were rehearsals behind the scenes. Full sections of speech that later showed up almost word for word in interviews people had watched and believed were completely natural. Now, those same lines were being traced back to early drafts filled with annotations, suggestions, timing cues. Insert breath here for emotion catch. Glance down and rub fingers when saying, "My brother stopped taking my calls." It wasn't just storytelling anymore. It felt structured, planned, refined. Every single reveal chipped away at something deeper. Something that once felt genuine now started to feel guided. You could see it happening right there. Harry shifted in his seat, trying to stay still but clearly struggling. His back straightened, then loosened, then slowly gave in, like the weight was getting harder to carry by the second. At one point, he rubbed his face so hard it left visible red marks across his cheeks. Not quick, not subtle. He pressed into his skin like he was trying to ground himself. Trying to stay present, his lawyer leaned in close, whispering urgently, trying to reach him, but Harry didn't respond. He just sat there, distant, like he was pulling away from everything happening around him. He didn't look angry. He didn't look defensive. He looked disconnected, like someone trying to step out of their own body because staying in it felt too heavy. And then came the moment that shifted everything again. 2 hours into the presentation, the air inside that courtroom felt unbearable, thick with tension that nobody could ignore. That's when Judge Thornberry read another message, and this time, even the legal teams went completely still. He still wants their approval. It's pathetic, but I can use it. The guilt over his mother makes him easy to redirect. That's the engine. The words didn't echo. They sank. Somewhere in the back, someone quietly whispered, "Jesus Christ!" before immediately catching themselves. The reaction was instinctive, because the weight of that statement hit hard. Harry flinched slightly, but this time he didn't break the same way. No sob, no visible collapse. Instead, something else happened. He closed his eyes, slowly, then opened them again. But when he did, there was a difference. They looked distant, quieter, like something behind them had shut off completely. Like whatever spark had been there earlier was gone. His security detail noticed it too. They exchanged quick glances, subtle but clear. One officer shifted his position slightly forward, another quietly reached for a water bottle clipped to his belt. They didn't step in, but they were ready if they had to. According to someone present, Harry looked like he had forgotten how to exist in that moment, like his body was there, but everything else had stepped back. When the judge asked if he needed a recess, there was no verbal response, no argument, no explanation. He simply nodded once. Slow, controlled, empty. It wasn't resistance. It wasn't acceptance. It was something else. The kind of response that comes when everything feels out of your hands. After a short 30-minute break, he returned, but something about him had changed. He was there physically, sitting in the same place, but emotionally, he felt distant. His steps were slower, more careful. His eyes were red, the kind that comes from holding too much in. His suit jacket hung loosely, like it didn't quite fit the same anymore. There were faint tissue marks on his sleeve. Small details, but impossible to miss. One of his lawyers tried to hand him a notepad. Something simple, something to hold on to. But Harry didn't take it. He didn't even look at it. And then, the presentation continued. This time, the court moved into what was described as Phase 3, the monetization of royal pain, and the tone shifted again, becoming more structured, more analytical. Messages were shown discussing which childhood memories still had value, which ones could still be used in future projects. Meghan had written to her friend, asking whether certain experiences should be included in a podcast or saved for a book release later. Don't waste it all. On the first product, Harry's got layers. The abandonment arc still hasn't been fully tapped. That phrase, abandonment arc, it landed heavily. It framed something deeply personal, as if it were a storyline, something that could be extended, developed, continued. Another message followed. We need to get a clip of him saying something about the Queen's corgis. Nostalgia is pure engagement. By now, Harry wasn't reacting the same way anymore. His hands rested loosely, no tension left in them. His gaze fixed on the edge of the witness box, unmoving. His breathing was shallow, steady but distant. The only signs he was still present were the small movements, a slight twitch in his jaw, the slow rise and fall of his chest. Even the judge noticed. She paused, looking toward the bench, then asked carefully, "Does the witness need another break?" This time, his lawyer answered immediately, "Yes, Your Honour, he needs a moment. He is not well." Harry didn't move, didn't respond, didn't shift. He just stared ahead, like even the idea of standing up would take more energy than he had left. When the court finally recessed, he didn't walk out alone. His security stepped in on both sides, guiding him carefully, steadying his pace like they were making sure he didn't lose balance. The next morning, everything felt different. There was a quiet tension, like the world itself was waiting to see what would happen next. And what followed came in a structured, deliberate way, divided into 3 categories, each one presented clearly for everyone to see: monetization, family manipulation, emotional exploitation. The first category focused on strategy, messages spanning months, even years. They weren't emotional in tone, they were organized, almost like business planning. One message outlined how different emotional narratives connected to public response. Diana legacy equals halo. William equals unresolved tension. Catherine equals comparison vector. Charles equals redemption thread if ever needed. Us equals survivors reclaiming identity. It read less like personal reflection and more like a breakdown of positioning. Their media deals were described as long-term financial structures. Something stable, something planned. There were discussions about pacing, about not revealing everything too quickly. The phrase trauma fatigue was used, referring to timing, spacing, controlling when certain stories would be shared. There were even ideas about future projects, including children's content tied to themes of resilience. One section labelled Crisis Capital stood out. It explained how negative press could be reframed into engagement, turning criticism into opportunity by presenting it through specific narratives. One line stood clear: "We don't run from scandals, we alchemize them." That word, alchemize, shifted the tone completely. What had once been seen as reactive now felt strategic. Then came the second category, and this one hit differently. It focused on how members of the royal family were described, not emotionally, but strategically. Prince William was referred to as a serious challenge, not because of emotion, but because of control and discipline. Catherine was described as the uncrackable mask, someone difficult to provoke publicly. There were comments about her reactions, her composure, even speculation about how a single moment of visible emotion could shift public perception. King Charles was described in a way that suggested emotional leverage, referencing his connection to the past and how that could shape future narratives if needed. And then there were references to the children. "We'll decide later how Windsor we want them to appear." That line lingered because it didn't explain. It suggested. And sitting there, hearing all of this unfold piece by piece, it naturally makes you stop and think about how much of what people see is carefully shaped and how much of it is exactly what it seems on the surface. Titles matter, but not as much as optics. Optics rule the story, shaping perception before the truth even gets a chance to speak. The royal blood of her children weighed against headlines, and the coldest messages of all cut the deepest, not for cruelty, but for the sheer coldness. These messages focused entirely on Harry, his fears, his vulnerabilities, his traumas, his inner world, and how to shape them. Meghan recounted a therapy session Harry attended. He opened up about the tunnel dream again, saying he keeps seeing his mother's face before the crash. The response, write it down, could be powerful. Open to something bigger. Grief turned into content, private pain transformed into material. There were discussions cataloguing his night terrors, fear of helicopters, guilt, shame, everything logged, indexed, measured like data points. Then came the message that froze the courtroom. He said he misses his brother. I told him that's just memory, not reality. Nostalgia, lies. Redirect fast. He's drifting, not guidance, not comfort. Control, emotional steering, pruning real connection. Harry's face, as the lines were read, went ashen and motionless. No protest, no tears, just stunned silence. And then the final message, delivered quietly by Judge Thornbury. Harry's love for his family is a vulnerability. If it isn't managed, it will derail everything. Not his love for her, not their love, but his love for his children, his family, his past, his identity. As the courtroom sat in shock, it became clear these weren't just messages. They revealed a mechanism, a system for controlling perception and emotion, with Harry not as a prince or a husband, but as a tool. The aftermath started the moment the courtroom adjourned. Institutional silence began to crack. Clarence House issued a calm statement, King Charles noting, "This is a difficult time for all families. Some matters are best resolved privately, with compassion." Sources described him as drained but composed. His first words after reading the transcripts, "This is not vengeance, this is gravity." He ordered discipline. No leaks, no gloating, no vindictive statements. Not a victory, but a collapse. What hurt Charles most wasn't damage to the institution. It was seeing his son portrayed as a pawn, a project, a walking strategy with trauma as currency. Prince William burned in silence, reportedly furious, not at Meghan, but at Harry. He let her do this. He handed us over. When William read the line, calling Catherine the uncrackable mask, he went silent, reportedly remarking she was trying to break her. Within 48 hours, the world had picked sides. But this wasn't like previous royal controversies. Even Meghan's staunchest UK supporters were speechless. Public opinion shifted sharply. Harry's sympathy ratings fell to the lowest since leaving royal life. Meghan's favourability plunged. In the US, reactions were more complex. Morning shows once praising their courage now hosted panels analysing manipulation. Editorials explored betrayal of family and trust. And social media became a battlefield. Hashtag Harry deserves better trended alongside hashtag Meghan exposed. TikTok exploded with therapists breaking down patterns of gaslighting and control. Instagram influencers quietly deleted supportive posts. Corporate sponsors felt pressure. One streaming executive reportedly said, "We bought a memoir, not a manipulation manual." Endorsement deals went into indefinite review. Mental health experts analysing the footage spoke of reality dissolution, the moment your understanding of your life is rewritten by someone else. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a trauma specialist, explained, "When someone you love uses your deepest wounds as tools, it doesn't just hurt, it fractures your reality." Harry realised moments he thought were genuine connections were performances. Messages about Diana were devastating. Decades of processing grief and therapy. And now those sacred moments had been optimised for engagement. Dr. Mitchell noted, "It's one thing to be betrayed. It's another to realise you weren't living your own life. You were starring in someone else's production." Palace insiders confirmed troubling patterns years earlier. One aide recalled William in 2020. "My brother speaks differently now, like he's reading a script." Catherine noticed too. Friends described frustration watching interviews, recognizing familiar anecdotes repackaged with new emphasis. Charles reportedly expressed concern to advisors. "I don't recognize my son's voice anymore. The words are his, but the message feels manufactured." And proving this manipulation impossible. You wait, hope, and prepare for the moment the truth surfaces. That moment came in London with devastating precision. 2 children, Archie and Lilibet, became the story's most heartbreaking victims, referenced in messages as branding opportunities, now caught in adult conflict. Custody questions arose, tangled in UK law, US law, royal protocol, and international agreements. Never had children with royal blood faced potential custody in American courts before. Harry's deepest fear, that his children were being raised in the same manufactured environment he had just discovered he'd lived in. Were milestones authentic or content opportunities? Doubts seeded by messages became a torment for a father determined to give a real childhood. Public sentiment slowly shifted, not away from Harry, but toward pity. Millions watched the courtroom footage, saw his trembling hands, blotchy face, and silence. Experts identified signs of trauma manipulation. A new narrative emerged. Not Harry the betrayer, but Harry the betrayed. Reports say King Charles communicated that Harry could return privately, quietly, not as a working royal, but as a son in need. "The institution has rules," Charles allegedly said, "but a father has none." Catherine, though hurt, reportedly supports the children's connection to their roots. William remains silent. His wounds are personal. Betrayal between brothers isn't constitutional, it's familial. Now, Harry faces 3 paths: stay and rebuild, leave and start over, or return to family. Every choice carries cost and sacrifice, but only one path offers truth. After all the tears, the transcripts, the trauma, the one thing Harry may crave most is truth, because no matter the distance travelled, no matter the crowns left behind, he remains a son, a brother, and perhaps one day ready to come home. The question isn't whether the door is open. The question is whether Harry has the strength to walk through it. Can love survive when truth shatters everything you believed? Can he find his way back? If this story hit you, share your thoughts below. And if you want more stories, insights, and updates, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. You won't want to miss what unfolds next. What happens next?